Welcome back to Man vs. Meeple, the show where we talk about everything board game related. I am your host, Jeremy Salinas. Once again, I have David Waybright to my right. That means we have guests on the show to talk to you about a brand new upcoming expansion for probably the largest game of 2016.
Definitely one of the biggest games this year.
We're talking about Scythe, Invaders from Afar, and to help us walk you through all the new components and how they play out in this fabulous game, we have, of course, Gary Chumbly back with us again.
Good to be back.
And Adam Dalton, the designer of Ninja Camp and a self-proclaimed Scythe fan.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Super fan.
Absolutely.
And to tell everyone here, we also have some products, the Meeple Realty.
Yeah.
These products are inserts for your games. This was made specifically for Scythe Collector's Edition, so it houses all the original Scythe stuff and this expansion.
Exactly.
And it all fits in the box. And you can take a look at our video and see all this stuff come up on the screen. It's wonderfully created, really cool. And for someone like me, when I started doing components breakdowns, 6 years ago,
all the Plano boxes?
I would always use Plano boxes in my games because I'm a storage freak and I love to keep my games in pristine condition. So this is kind of the next step for gamers. So
yeah, Jeremy, this game has a lot of setup to it.
Oh,
So just having that extra speed that you can get things set up is a big plus for any game, but especially a game with a lot of components like this.
Absolutely, and it's got a lot of cool moving parts. So check that out at meeplerealty.com. So let's talk about Scythe Invaders from Afar.
Yeah.
So what's new in the game? David, do you want to walk us through some of it?
Well, mainly there are two new clans, if you will. What are the names of them again?
We have Clan Togawa Shogunate, and that is the purple guys, and then we have Clan Albion, which is the green.
Yeah.
You're also going to get some 50 coin markers because just the natural influx of two more players.
A new player boards.
New player boards, totaling up to 7 now.
Yep.
And all your cool little miniatures and stuff for all the normal components that come with the game.
Yeah, you get a whole new set of mechs and all the different components for the new clan. So it's quite a bit for an expansion.
So the game adds, like we said, 2 new clans. Let's first talk about Togawa.
Okay, so Togawa, this is the purple clan over here, and it's the one I have the most experience with. And I've played Scythe quite a bit since it came out. Probably the most played game for me since Gen Con, so since it released.
How many times do you think you've played it?
I think I've played it 7 times now, which is a decent amount for a 2
That's a huge
2 to
investment
2.5 hour game over the last 6 weeks or so.
Right.
So about on average once a week. Played a couple times back to back. So I got a chance with the Purple Clan, and they have the big key to them. I think the big fundamental change that both Albion adds as well is these little tokens that we can add in that when your character moves to a spot, you get to throw them out. And for this clan, it's actual traps. So you put them down, you put them face down, and they give negative impact when your opponents move in there. So you can use a little bit of a little mind game with them a little bit.
Sure.
Just make them understand that this is your territory.
People think twice.
If you're going to come in here, you may be able to defeat me, but it's still going to cost you. These things cost a couple combat cards. They cost 4 gold, which is the actual victory points. So just moving in there costs you 4 points.
And you can reset those traps if they've been sprung.
That's
so basically, if someone moves into the location, it springs the trap for them, even prior to combat taking place.
Yes, it does. Prior to combat. And then it springs it, you know it's there, and then if for some reason they move out or I move back in later on, I can reset the trap. So it doesn't change the trap, but you still know that, well, if I go back in there again, I'm going to lose those 4 gold again, or I'm going to lose those 2 combat cards again.
Right.
Which, incentivizes people just to stay in their own land, which is what I like.
And it's interesting, too, because both of these factions start on spaces that are interconnected with the entire board, meaning they're not landlocked by the water spaces.
Yeah, I think that's a huge difference with these guys. That was the most eye-opening aspect when we played with them, is that otherwise, you feel pretty restricted from the very beginning of the game. You have to get that riverwalk. You have to be able to get across some water. And these guys can go, march out straight to the center of the board and all the way over to the other starting position for the new clan.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. The other thing with your Togawa is your ability to move directly to those locations where you have traps once that ability is opened up.
Yeah, once you open the mech ability, each of their mech abilities is just different, just like all the other factions. But they can move to those traps wherever you've placed those traps out there with your character. So you can get moving a lot faster. Now your Riverwalk is a lot less. You can only take one character across rather than doing per turn. So it sort of limits you there. But again, you're already on your land, so you don't have to walk across rivers near as much.
Right.
So definitely gives that asymmetrical feel to the game again,
Right.
beyond just the base game.
Right.
Now, Albion's pretty similar, right?
Yeah, that's my experience. Clan Albion also comes with 4 tokens, which again are unique to these two clans because none of the other clans have any, or factions have any of the tokens in the game.
But these aren't traps, right?
These aren't
are
traps.
The flags.
No, these are kind of area control for the player. So when they move to a location, they can drop these. They can't be dropped right next to the base, but at the end of the game, they count as more controlled areas for that player. And they also give the ability, very much like the Purple Clan, is that once they're placed on the board, you can move once your spot's uncovered, you can actually move your characters to that location, kind of like a teleportation into that area, which again gives you a huge range of abilities. I was using it for the simple fact that when you guys fought me, I was like, that's fine, fight me. I go back to my base, and then I'm just going to move right back into that location where I establish control.
The penalty of going back to your base is almost negated with that ability.
Sure.
Plus, you can not only move to the flags, but to wherever you have workers too, right?
It's pretty
Which
awesome.
is huge.
Yeah.
I mean, you have a giant network, but mid to end game, you're going to have a network of workers and those flags. So you pretty much, and you're mostly going to be moving that way, I would think.
Now, I know Gary felt that pain when we were playing.
Very much so.
So how did you feel though? Did you feel you were like not?
Well, I had to work.
Because you played with one of the original factions when we played together as our group.
I played with Nordic. I had to work my way. And I had to battle Jeremy in order to get, to complete one of my objectives. Well, I battled him, and he was like, all right, that's fine. And I worked hard to get there to battle him. He goes back to his base. His next turnaround, he goes right back to the flag and was able to win the game by doing a couple other things he was doing. A bit frustrating, but, that's how the mechanic works for him.
And that's one of I think the 2 new factions would be the kind of factions I'd like to play with, because the other ones, when we played this without those, it is a little restrictive at the beginning. You really feel like, ugh.
Well, especially if you're locked in by a river.
Right.
Absolutely.
And these guys, not only do they have that network ability, but things are just open from the very beginning. It would be a little bit more freeing for my, tastes.
And
anyway.
you were playing with Tagawa, and you hit the factory pretty early. You were fairly able to kind of make your way and just plant yourself and put your traps down. And it was like, okay, well, I'm going to have to still then stay in my little hole over here and work on that.
Yeah, it's an interesting, that faction allows you to turtle up, which is something that you typically don't do inside. Well, combat in general, it's not as combative a game as what most people think Scythe is.
Yeah.
But definitely with using that clan, you throw out some hindrance to people and make them think twice about battling, especially with them compared to other clans.
Yeah, it just occurred to me too. I don't think you did this, but you could drop a trap on the factory space, right?
I thought
did you?
I think you did.
I thought I did. I thought I did.
I don't know because I never got close enough to even tell. But that would be an interesting thing to deal with for sure.
Now, something I think that's important to bring out for the Invaders from afar is it doesn't have it allows you to play 7 players, and I actually, because I'm a big Scythe fan, I want to try that at least one time. It'll be a long game, but I want to try that. But it adds the variability in there. So folks that are playing it a whole lot, I have another friend that's played 15 or 20 times.
Wow.
So I mean, he's just played a ton. So folks I've played a decent amount to be able to really change up even more so and make the games different to be able to provide that variability that when you're playing the game that just adding that extra expansion, extra clans adds.
It would be interesting to see the balance on this game. If you play a 3-player game and 2 players play the new clan and one of them plays the old, where that one player is locked from the start by rivers. That would be an interesting dynamic to see how that plays out.
My guess would be I wouldn't be surprised to see the 2 new clans interacting with each other a lot more quickly, and maybe that third clan being left alone a little bit, perhaps.
Yeah, probably according to which the other player is, because these clans are separate from each other. And I'm sure, at least the idea I got behind this, it doesn't feel like these are. I felt like these were designed with the game, with the game in mind ahead of time, knowing that I know I'm going to interact with these, and so they're not not an afterthought.
They had spaces on the board already.
Yeah, exactly.
I think they ran out of room now.
I'd say that's a fair guess. Yeah, right.
So, would you guys suggest this? Would this be an expansion you'd want to grab for the game if you already have it?
Go first.
I think for me, I think the type of player that wants this is somebody that does want to try a 7-player game or wants the variability. I really like the fact that it's sort of separate because I like the idea of, well, I can buy the game and not be spending all this extra money.
Sure.
And I can get a game that works for me because maybe I only play 3 players most of the time.
Yeah.
But I like the idea in it. So it's definitely, I think, one that is worth buying. If you're playing a lot, definitely worth buying.
Gary, do you own Scythe?
I do not own Scythe. No, I didn't. I thought about it a lot, and everybody was talking about backing it. For some reason, I just didn't. I held back. I just didn't. I've played it now a couple of times. I think just my own issue of just, the way the game kind of ends, like how it kind of ended with us.
That race to the end.
That race to the end, and boom, like, I just wish I had one more turn because I would have probably made it a lot closer.
Just
that can
better.
be a little frustrating.
I'd have to play it better. I need to play more with Adam, right? But I think I agree with him, though. For people who really want the variability, I think it's really good. These factions, I think also maybe seem to incentivize maybe a little more combat if you want a little bit more of that, because it doesn't have to be a very combative game if you don't want it to. But I had to get to the point where I actually had to go combat with Jeremy.
We had a fair amount of combat in our last game, I thought.
Toward the end, it kind of got a little more like that.
Yeah, more so than our first.
It's never going to be a combat game, though. Like this
No,
expansion
not at all.
doesn't make it a combat game.
No.
Combat is a part of the game, but it's still very much a Euro-style game in my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, very much
with
so.
some combat added in.
Yeah.
Now, I would say I too don't own the game, but of course you do, so that's fine with me. I think if what I'd say is, play mechanics aside, if you own Scythe, I think this is maybe what you were saying, Adam. You kind of have to get this in a way. I think if you're gonna invest in Scythe, I would want these two just for no other reason than the completionist in me. I'd want all the pieces and parts, and like you said, even if you're not ever going to play with 7 players, the variability, the options that it gives you to change things up and play with different clans, I think would be key.
Yeah, and not only the factions, but the player boards themselves.
Right.
You're adding,
absolutely.
Those different mechanics in it as well. I like Scythe. This is one of those games that's so well produced. I mean, it's beautiful to look at. If you're gonna buy Scythe, you just need to spend the extra money to buy all the other cool stuff with it. And I feel the same thing with the expansion. It's one more piece to an already incredible production of a game. There's nothing mechanically wrong with the game. It's just that in-game condition for me is bothersome. As far as the gameplay itself, I'm perfectly fine with it. I like playing the game, and it's a beautiful game to look at.
That's what, the beauty of it, and like you said, if you had this and the expansion and insert like this Meeple Realty one, it on the table, all of that, anyone who walks by that's going to have
They'll
to
stop.
go, oh my,
Watch.
what is this
Yeah.
thing?
Yeah.
You're going to grab some attention with this game on the table for sure.
So you're looking at probably 4 hours, right?
For a 7-player game?
Adam,
What
so.
do you think?
I think so. If you had players that were all had played before, knew exactly what was going
Maybe
on,
shorter?
maybe 3 hours. But I would plan on 3 to 4 hours for it. Is what I honestly. But I do really. It's a good enough game, an enjoyable game, and part of the reason I like it is the quick individual turns that can happen.
Right.
I think you wouldn't have a ton of downtime. It just take a while to get through all 7 players.
That's true. That's a good point. It can be long, but the downtime isn't horrible. But it's funny to hear, if everyone knows exactly what they're doing, it could be as short as 3 hours.
I mean, there's a lot of play. But how many games do you play with 7 players that are this depth,
True.
That's true.
size? You don't.
That's a great point.
Not a Euro heavy game.
No.
It's not heavy, but medium weight Euro. So, guys, that is Invaders from Afar. It is coming out very soon. Make sure you go pre-order it now. Subscribe to this YouTube channel. Make comments. Let us know what you're looking for. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, like us on Facebook, and everything else. So check us out again. Thank you, Gary, for being on the show.
Love
Thank
being
you,
here.
Adam.
Thank you.
Let us know what else you have coming out in the future, and we'll have you back on Man vs. Meeple. And take care, guys.
Thanks.
Season 1 of Man vs. Meeple is sponsored by TMG Games, publisher of great games like Yokohama, Guilds of London, and the soon-to-be-released Colosseum.